whenever you have some kind of injustice that has happened against somebody because of their gender, their race, you know, their religion, and it's cause for protest, a lot of times the wrong people see that as an opportunity for them to do stupid things, to break the law. And that's good that they're saying this in this on BBC News. There's not even one thing about this guy. Um, that's the good thing that they're saying on CNN is that when you see all this, whenever they have these protests, there's a small group of people that is using. What they do is they hijack the protest and use it as a means for them, to break into stores and steal things. They call that looting, and just damage property, public property, burn cars, and throw Molotov cocktails, bombs at the police. And people are trying to emphasize that the people that are doing that are not really the protesters. Not the people who are doing that are troublemakers. This happens all over the world. I remember when was this, about 5 years ago or so. Remember there was a really bad earthquake. I think it was an earthquake in Chile, in South America, and there was this was an earthquake, yeah. An earthquake happened, and people are fleeing, and they think it's the end of the world because it was a really bad one. I think 9 point something on the Richter scale, which is really bad, really strong. And then you would think people would flee for their lives, yeah? But no, some people had to break into stores while they were fleeing. And I thought that has to be the lowest of all lows, to use, this is this area that could have, thousands of people could have died, but no, these guys have to go loot the shopping mall, yeah? They have to go run in there and steal things and run out and I was listening to another radio talk show, and a Navajo guy called into this talk show. It's another Indian talk show. And this Navajo guy said, you know what? All them people are down there, they're Catholics. That's why they're doing that. I'm thinking, shit, what does religion have to do with that? That has to be one of the most stupid things I ever heard in my life. Everybody down there is Catholic. That's you have to think about that. Some people are just idiots, yeah. Religion didn't have a damn thing to do with it. It doesn't matter. It's how a person is. Wherever you go in this world, you're going to find good people and nice people. Not so nice people, not so good people. Yeah, wherever you go, no matter what group it is, no matter what society it is, you're going to find nice people and not nice people. Yes, even among the Navajo Nation. Yeah, I know some real good dudes down there, real Navajo res boys that I made good friends with. Yeah, and these are cool guys. And so I know not all Navajos are like this idiot guy that called into this radio show that said, they're all Catholic. That's why they're doing that. see, excuse me, that guy's married to a German girl. That's I kind of know him roundabout way. Yeah, he's oh crap! There's some Jehovah Witnesses walking by. Here I am talking about being non-judgmental. Kind of contradicted himself, but I think we can safely say that's a cult. Yeah, really. When you look at the rules and things, it is not normal. Um, and forcing religion down your throat. It's not a normal thing to do. That is oppression, and maybe even among those people, there's somebody who's going against the you know the norm. You never know. Anything is possible. Yeah, I have a Mormon friend, and if you meet this guy, you would not think he's a Mormon. He doesn't even look like a Mormon. He's strong in his faith, but he's cool. He doesn't push it in your face. Yeah, you wouldn't even know unless you ask him. Yeah, he's the kind of guy that's like, hey, I'm a guy, I'm trying to help out and do what I can to help people, and I don't want you to, I want you to see me as a guy who helps people, not a Mormon guy who helps people, but a guy who helps people. And I thought that was nice. More Mormons need to be like that guy. So do you see what I mean? In every group, there's always going to be really good people and not good people. Yeah? So that's how it is. That's just the way it is. And so whenever you say, well, shit, that's how the Mormons are, or shit, that's how them Germans are, or that's how them white people are, yeah, you're a racist. And you really have a problem because not all people in the same group are the same. Wherever you go, as I said, you're going to find good people and you're going to find bad people. Yeah? And it doesn't matter what religion they are, what skin color they are, what race they are, what gender they are, what age group they are. You cannot, say that everybody is the same in that category or whatever. Yeah, it just to think like that is to think like everybody's a machine. Some people call that machinistic way of thinking. I never used that term in a long time, but that's to say like you think you can predict what a person can do, and so like if you say, okay, that guy comes from a poor neighborhood, so that means he's gonna probably have a lot of kids from different mothers, and some of them kids are probably going to be the result of rapes, and he's probably going to end up in prison, and he'll probably die before he reaches 30 years old. You see, you can't say that is the truth because you don't know. You absolutely don't know. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. There is no such thing as fate. Yeah. We have a character in our Lakota Star Knowledge stories called Wakanka, and what she does is she has the ability to see things in the future. However, what she says is that every moment this changes. So it's because it's based on your thought patterns. So what you see today, yeah, if you go tomorrow, you see, look at the same time period in the future, it's going to look different because your thoughts changed. Yeah, your thought patterns changed. So it's always based on the present moment. That is how that is. So you can't say that okay, because the person is this way, that means that's how they're going to turn out, because to think like that is to think that's how you think of machines. Machines operate like that. And and we are not machines. Yeah, and so and to think like that is really disrespectful to people, because it is showing that you think you know everything about that person. So you're kind of setting yourself up like a god. And this is leading to duality, what I was talking about earlier in the first hour of the show. And this is going to, like I said, this is going to lead to racism and things like that. And so we always have to be careful when you're reading the newspaper or watching the TV news, and you see things happening in this neighborhood, and you have to be careful with your generalizations, because sometimes you might be really wrong. Yeah, there's always going to be exceptions to the rules. There's always going to be, because humans, we have this thing called volition. Volition is, excuse me, it's the ability to change your course in life. Because the way you're living right now, whatever you're doing in your life right now, whatever it is that even if you're a bum, yeah, you have a course in front of you. It's based on the way you live. Or if you have a job, you have that course in front of you is all defined by your job duties, your responsibilities, your responsibility to go to that job and work. Yeah, so you do have a course in front of you. However, you can change it. See, that's a hint at what volition is. You have the ability to change it. You can wake up one day and say, you know what? I'm not taking this shit anymore. Yeah? You can go to your boss and you say, hey, you know what, Mr. Boss Man? I'm sick and tired of these making donuts. I want to make donuts that are shaped in squares. Why? Where in the Bible does it say that all donuts have to be in circles? I want to make square donuts. I want to make pentagon donuts. I want to make Star of David donuts. I want to make half moon donuts. I want to make donuts in the shape of a car. And I think that'll make us a lot of money, but you don't want to do that. So I'm going to go off and I'm going to open my own donut business, and I'm going to make custom donuts. So there. Do you see what I mean? The guy was on a course, and he realized, this course is really, it's just humdrum, It's just, he's like and he's come to the point where it's boring now, yeah, and he doesn't like it. He doesn't. And when he wakes up in the morning, he's like, "Oh crap! I have to go and make circle donuts. Why do I have to make circle donuts?" You see what I mean? He has these other ideas that would make the job fun, and people might like that. Yeah. And so then he goes into his own business, and next thing you know, he's making cakes, yeah, in the shapes of all kinds of things, yeah, making cakes in the shape of a city. No kidding. There's a guy that does this in America, and there's probably several. Yeah, that excuse me. There's a TV show on it. I saw it. Yeah. So what do they call it? The Cake King or something like that. If you ever have a chance to see it, watch it. It's really interesting how they make these cakes. But anyway, that's innovative. Yeah, you see what I mean? He changed his course. See, we have the ability to do that in our lives. If we don't like something, you take a step back and examine, and you say, what can I do? What can I do to change this? Can I switch jobs? Can I afford to do that? Maybe I should put up some money in savings, yeah. So when I think I have enough money saved up, then I can quit my job and start looking for a new job, or I'll start looking for a new job right now and save up money at the same time. And if I find something, then I can quit my job, start the new one. I have money saved up to carry me through between jobs. and make my life more interesting. You see what I mean? Take a look at yourself and you say, geez, I'm really too skinny. I gotta put some meat on my bones. So you take appropriate action. Do you see what I mean? You can change your course. That is really a powerful tool in your life. And we all have that ability. Yeah? Some people don't. That's obviously people who are, really, really severely handicapped and stuff that, but, what I'm saying is most of us, I should say most healthy people have the ability to do that. And some people who have mental diseases also don't have that ability, so they have to be looked after. Yeah. So there is exceptions, but mostly we have that ability to do that. We have that ability to change the course in our lives. So you can't say that all poor people are going to be a certain way. There are some famous people who came from really poor families. Yeah, they struggled against adversity. Yeah, there's famous leaders that came from really, really poor families, and they struggled. They had a talent, and they had, they were in the right place at the right time. Or if they weren't in the right place, they moved to the right place. Yeah, so if you're a really good yodeler living in South Dakota on the reservation, and you yodel better than a lot of famous country yodelers, and you're sitting there saying, yeah, I'm better than so-and-so, and I'm better than so-and-so, and you can prove it. You are a damn good yodeler. Well, how's anybody going to know if you just stay on the res? See what I mean? You have to take yourself to where the need is for that. Where if you want to get famous for that, sitting around twiddling your thumbs and yodeling in the front porch is not going to get you famous. You have to go to Nashville. That's the country music capital of the world. You have to go there and start, looking up some gigs, and believe me, there's going to be a shitload of yodelers that are doing the same damn thing. So you have to come up with a plan to make yourself stand out. Wear a headdress and yodel. Hey. Nobody's going to expect that, yeah? But you see what I mean? We have that ability to change. So when we look at these scenes that's happening in Ferguson, Missouri, and you see all these black people doing this, all these black people, and you see these people looting the stores, don't assume that these are all protesters. Don't assume that, that all black people, when they protest, that they loot, because it's not the truth. Yeah, I know CNN showed some good footage one time where they had some black leaders, real protesters. In the beginning, they were standing in front of the stores, and they were telling people, don't go in. Yeah, so they were protecting their neighborhood from their own people. Yeah, but in some cases, they couldn't get everywhere, so unfortunately, a lot of places got looted. So don't think that they are all this way. And so what they're trying to say is that, the people who are doing all this looting are the troublemakers. It's a small group of troublemakers who hijacked this injustice and used it to their own advantage. This is selfish. Yeah? You know what? Indian people do the same thing. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. Yeah? There's a group called American Indian Movement, and they do the same thing too. Yeah? They take a social injustice, they hijack it, make it their own, and then they use it only for their image. They don't give a shit about the person that they're allegedly helping. They only use this to promote themselves. That's what the American Indian Movement does. I say to you with all truth that most American Indians do not support the American Indian Movement. Yeah? Again, most American Indians do not support the American Indian Movement. And I'm going to explain to you why. The American Indian Movement is not traditional. They do not represent the traditional people, and none of none of the people in the American Indian movement can speak any Indian language. Yeah, that is 100% true. Yeah, none of the American Indian movement people can speak their own language. They only speak English. Yeah, so they do not represent traditional American Indians. None of them speak their language. None of them know their culture, and they're nothing but troublemakers. Yeah, they make the situation worse than it was before, and then they leave. Okay, yeah, the American Indian movement was organized in the early 70s. I think even it was an offshoot of another organization. I don't even know if they had a name. Um, in California, um, there were. Well, let me start it way before. Okay, in the 1940s and the 1950s, America set up this program called relocation. And the relocation program, the whole idea was to get Indians off the reservation and into the cities to assimilate them, yeah, to give them training so that they can find a job and work and become good American citizens. That was the whole idea. So the government put aside a lot of money for this, and so excuse me, it all depended on what did you want to do for um, what did you want to do? What kind of job were you interested in? Because um, the government made agreements with these training centers in various parts of the country, and so, for example, if you wanted to train to be a nurse, then you were sent to um, a certain city that had that nursing school that the government had to deal with. So you would go there and get your nurses training and try to find a job from there. Yeah, and so you got sent off for training and possible employment. That was the whole plan. And at that time, on a lot of reservations, and it still is this way, is that it was there's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of not good things happening. Yeah, there's a lot of no economic development. There's nothing to do. So the government thought this would be a good program. The American government thought this would be a good program to get Indians off the reservation, get them training, and get them so they have jobs and become part of American society, which on paper is a good idea. However, it didn't turn out that way. They had these brochures, yeah, that they would put out, and the brochures would look. You would see pictures of these happy Indians living in really nice houses, and allegedly their kids going to these really nice schools, and that the parents had really good jobs, and and lived in really good neighborhoods. That did not turn out to be true. The Indians ended up in the slums and the ghettos of America. When they were able to find jobs, the jobs were the kind where you get paid at the end of the day. So in other words, you don't really know if you have work the next day. So it made it really stressful. Yeah, and a lot of people had a hard time dealing with the stress. And the other thing was that Indians were facing racism from all corners of society. Yeah, Asian people were oppressing Indians. Mexican people were oppressing Indians. Black people were oppressing Indians. It didn't matter which way you turned, you got racism from every group of people there. Now, there's always exceptions, remember that. But most situations, you face racism from every group of people that was not American Indian. And the police didn't were not good protection either. So in the 1960s in California, some some Indian activists decided to organize. They wanted to make a statement to America to say, hey, excuse me, I had to adjust my mic. They wanted to make a statement to America saying, hey, there's something wrong. We have to do something about this injustice, that Indians are getting killed, and the police are not investigating. They're just saying it's natural causes. Yeah, women are getting raped, and police are not investigating it in a good way. So there was, some things happening that weren't good. So, and nobody was helping. So they felt they had to make a political stand. So in these, like I said, in these cities, you had a relocation program was for all Indians. So as a result, you had Indians, in every major American city, you had Indians from all kinds of tribes there. Like I said, it all depends on what did you want to train for. Yeah, what did you want to become? And yes, you got the training, but hell, most of the time you didn't even get the job. So you had to get whatever was available. So there, people got trained to be auto mechanics, and they couldn't even get jobs at any gas station because they were Indian. Yeah, and so they ended up having to work as a janitor and get paid at the end of the day. And it really didn't turn out good. And all this racism was happening against Indians, and the crime against Indians was really outrageous, and the police was doing nothing to stop it. So they felt that, we can't take this shit anymore. And the tribes, the tribal governments, remember what I told you many times on this show, excuse me, today's tribal governments the same as the tribal chiefs of our ancestors. Today's tribal governments are puppet governments of Washington, D.C. They were created in 1934 under something called the the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934. And basically what this does is it gives all Indian tribes a government, excuse me, which, sorry about that, I apologize. The new tribal government it no longer recognizes the traditional people. It no longer recognizes the traditional chiefs. And now the people can choose who they want to be their leaders the same way Americans do it. And the result is that 10% of the population is rich and 90% of the population is in extreme poverty. And the 10%, they control the government. And when they bring in economic development, they do it so that it only benefits that 10%. Now, if they ever bring something in that benefits all the people, they will only do that if that 10% receives more than the 90%. Yeah. So they say they're always to keep their money, they have to keep 90% of the population living in third world conditions. This is what happens on reservations. And so these tribal leaders, they don't care for the people. They only care for themselves, their families and friends, and that they are the ones who keep the money. So they don't give a shit about their relatives that are in the cities facing all this injustice. So the tribal governments are absolutely no help whatsoever. Today, it's still that way. Yeah, tribes will not help their tribal members unless they live on their reservation. You see, this is not the Indian way. This is not generosity to say, well, we can only help you, but you have to live on the res. See, that's not the Indian way. You see, the tribal government is not traditional whatsoever. They're just a bunch of selfish fools. And they always will be. Yeah, and how do they stay in office? Why don't this 90% overthrow them? Well, I'll tell you why. They keep this 90% drunk. Yeah, And then when the election time comes, they buy votes. And this 10% are they have there's a lot of people in their family, so they make sure they vote, and they go out and all the winos that are out in the streets, they come from that 90%. So they go and give them money to vote for their people. This is how they stay in power. Yeah. So it's really corrupt, and they only hire their own relatives. Nepotism is illegal in America, but not on a reservation. Nepotism is a way of life on the reservation. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, nepotism is when you only hire your family members for jobs. Yeah. This is illegal. And so you have all that corruption happening on the reservation, and then you so the Indians that are in the cities cannot get any help from their own tribal leaders, and so they have nothing but their own legs to stand on. So they decide to organize, and they find in one of the laws. This is an American law, okay? This is an American law. It's a federal law that states that if there is a land that belongs to the American government, but the American government is no longer using that land for anything, this does not apply to forests, but let's say the land used to be a military base, or maybe it used to be a federal prison, or maybe there used to be, it's something that has to belong to the American government, okay? If that is no longer occupied and the American government is no longer using it, then this law says that Indians can come and settle on that land. That's what this law says, okay? So this group of Indian activists back in, I think it's 1967 or 69, somewhere in the late 60s, or maybe even early 70s, but I'm thinking late 60s. They decided to make a political statement, and they went to this Alcatraz. This used to be a federal prison where the worst criminals in America were sent there. It's an island, and there's sharks around the island. This is why they had that there. So if you try to escape, sharks are going to eat you up. See what I mean? It was the worst criminals were sent there. Alcatraz was, I don't know when it was closed, but there was nobody there anymore. The buildings were left vacant. Everything was just left as it is. So these Indian activists decided to use this American law to occupy that island, which is perfectly legal. So they did. Yeah, they got on boats and they went there and they occupied it, and they got world media. They got the world media attention, so there was TV stations from all over the world going there, televising it, talking to the leader. I forget his name now. He's not American Indian Movement. This is before American Indian Movement. This is a real civil rights guy. Okay, this guy, he's a real civil rights leader. He's an Indian guy. And they occupied that land, and movie stars started to join them. Yeah, Marlon Brando went over there. A lot of famous people went over there to support these Indians. Yeah, a lot of famous actors and singers. Heck, I think even Johnny Cash went over there in support of these Indians. That these Indians need to receive justice. America needs to honor the treaties. Yeah, this is what this was all about. And this was a non-violent incident, a non-violent protest. Then, remember what I said earlier, a lot of times bad people come in, troublemakers come in, and they use something like this for their own personal gain. And sure enough, that's what happened in Alcatraz too. Some bad Indians went in there, some troublemaker Indians went in there, and they tried to hijack this incident. And next thing you know, there's infighting among the occupants of Alcatraz. These are the troublemakers that are doing this. There's infighting going on, and what led to the downfall was that one of these troublemakers shot and killed the civil rights leader. So you see, the troublemakers, these are Indians too. So in this group, you had good people and you had bad people. And it was the bad people who assassinated the leader of this group. He was a good guy. They assassinated him. I think they even killed a couple kids. And then all hell broke loose, and they had to leave the island. It lost its cause. Without that leader, it fell apart. Yeah. From this troublemaker group that led to the downfall of this organization came the American Indian movement. Yeah. So it was the troublemakers. See, they ended up in prison, and when they were in prison, just like the gangs of all races, they recruit among the fellow prisoners. So that's the same. They did the same thing. So this proves to you that the American Indian movement is a gang. It's not a civil rights group. This is a gang. The American Indian movement, they're like, if they're going to say that, if anybody disagrees with them, they're going to say, you're wrong, you must be destroyed. That is the same way the Catholic Church operated back in the 1,000 years ago. That's the same way terrorist groups operate today. If you don't agree with them, they'll kill you. Look at what's happening in Syria with this, and not Syria, in what's this country, Iraq, with this ISIS. That's the same way. When they capture people, these people are pleading for their lives, and they're saying ISIS forever, long live ISIS, and then they take all these prisoners, lay them on the hill, and shoot them in the back of the head as they're pleading for their lives. The American Indian movement does the same thing. All I have to say is Anna Mae Aquash. That's what they did to her. She's not the only one. There were others that they killed like this too. This is not a civil rights group. Yeah? So they recruited in the prisons. And they got these are the social misfits. These are the troublemakers. They recruited them, called them warriors, and then when they got out of prison, these guys started recruiting other troublemakers in the various cities in America. They used what they did was the social injustice that the city Indians were receiving, the American Indian movement hijacked that and used it for their cause to recruit other gang members into their gang. And then they started running drugs. They started running guns, illegal guns. This is how they made their money. Yeah? How does a gang, if a gang is going to get really big and have a lot of members, an organization, it's going to need money. And these guys are from prison. So how do you think they got their money? Probably by the ways that put them in prison in the first place, which is illegal activity. And that's how they got their money. So they went around, whenever there was something wrong that happened to Indian people, they go there and they protest and they say, we want justice, and they go there, and then nothing happens. And then they leave. When they leave, the situation is even worse than it was before they got there. So they don't make anything better, they make it worse. The obvious example was in 1973, I think it was, or 71. I can't remember the exact year. There was a see, on Pine Ridge Reservation back then, it was against the law to drink alcohol and have alcohol on their reservation. Nevertheless, the tribal leaders go to, they go off the reservation, buy truckloads of alcohol, bring it to their own reservation, and then they sell it to their own people. Their tribal leaders are poisoning their own people. The tribal leaders are killing their own people and making them pay for it, even though they have this law that you cannot drink and sell alcohol on the reservation. Do you see what I mean about political tribal governments being corrupt? This is another good example. So as a result of that, this guy named Raymond Yellow Thunder went into a town south of the Pine Ridge Reservation into the state of Nebraska, to this town called Gordon, Nebraska. He was a drunk guy, and he went into this bar. I think it was a wedding party or some kind of party. It was all white people. And they decided to have fun with this guy. He's a drunk Indian. And this is a really racist town. So him being drunk, he wasn't thinking straight. So he went into that bar, and some cowboys roughed him up, and they told him they held him on a pool table, and they took off they made him take off his pants and his shorts. So all he had on was his shirt, his cowboy hat, and his cowboy boots. That's all he had on. And they told him to dance. He didn't want to, so they beat him up, so he started dancing. Yeah? And everybody was just laughing and laughing and laughing, and I bet you anything, people, today there are racists in that town that have pictures of this, that they're keeping it to themselves. I bet you anything. Because that's how bad the racism is. Huh? So when the party was over, these two brothers, they're white guys, they took this Raymond Yellow Thunder and they beat him up outside the dance hall, and they threw him in the trunk. Then they proceeded to drive out into the country, and it was October, November, so it's really, really, really cold at night. So they would take him, they would go out in the country someplace, and then they would, drink some beer. Then they would take this Indian guy out and have fun beating him up. It was their punching bag for them, yeah? So they would beat him up and then throw him back in the trunk, drive around some more, stop, beat him up some more. They did this about 3 times, and they decided it was sunlight, so they decided to just throw him out there and let him die. Yeah? And they did. And he died. A couple of days later, a farmer was going out there with his tractor to collect hay or something for his cattle, and he saw something out there, so he called the cops right away, and it was this Raymond Yellow Thunder. So they they found out what happened, and these two brothers admitted that they were the ones who they said, well, he was alive when we left him. They said, we thought he was just going to get up and go home. And as a result, these two brothers, these two brothers they just got a slap on the wrist. They didn't even see jail time whatsoever. So, at the same time, remember what I said about the tribal government? They're really corrupt. And during this time period, Pine Ridge Sioux tribe had an incredibly corrupt leader by the name of Dick Wilson. This guy was no good. This is a good example of a really bad Indian. He had his own private police called the Goons. The Goon stands for Guardian of the Oglala Nation. And these guys were the mixed bloods. Yeah? These guys are part Mexican. They have names like Hernandez and Martinez, and they really have a lot of Mexican-sounding names. And they, just like on Cheyenne River, these mixed bloods control the government. They're the 10% that has the money on that reservation. The 90% are the traditionals. Yeah, and their reservation is very similar to Cheyenne River, except it's in reverse. On Cheyenne River, it's the west side that's traditional, and the east side that's these mixed blood. On Pine Ridge, it's the other way around. It's the west side that's the mixed blood that control the 10%. The 10% that control the government, and it's the 90% traditionalists who live on the east side. Yeah. So these goons started to harass the traditionals. And they would go out and kidnap young girls from the traditional side and take them to Richard Wilson's big house, and they would get them drugged up and basically they were sex slaves. This is the honest to goodness truth. This is not rhetoric. This is not lies. This is not gossip. This is the honest to goodness truth. This is what happened. Now, Raymond Yellow Thunder, he comes from the traditional side of the family. Obviously, he has that name, Yellow Thunder. Yeah? Okay. So his family was outraged, that these two white guys just got a slap on the wrist. And none of them saw jail time. Yeah? They got away with murder. Raymond Yellow Thunder's family, that's an injustice. Yeah? And see, in America, when a crime there's a certain law called the Federal Indian Crimes Act. And what this is, it's a list of crimes. They're all serious. That if an Indian is involved in that crime, whether he or she is the victim or the perpetrator, it doesn't matter. But if an Indian is a party of that crime, that case is a federal court case. It doesn't matter which state it happened in, whether it's South Dakota, Oklahoma, Arizona, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's going to go to federal court. Federal is above state. Okay? So, here we have a murder of a Lakota Indian. This should have been federal court because the victim was an American Indian. But Nebraska took the matter into their own hands and tried it in state court, the state of Nebraska. So Nebraska broke the law. But they openly broke this law. So Raymond Yellow Thunder's family, this is an incredible injustice to them. So they go to their tribal leader, Dick Wilson, from the east side. Notice the last name, Wilson. It's not an Indian-sounding name. He's a mixed blood. Yeah, remember I told you this guy is really corrupt. He has his own private police. He has his own Gestapo. Yeah. So they go to him asking for help. They say call in the FBI because this is supposed to be a federal court case. And what does Richard Wilson say? Well, he shouldn't have been drunk in the first place. That's all he says. And tells him to get off his property. These are his own people. But because they're because they're full blood, he says, get out of here. So they have nowhere to turn to. Yeah, they have nowhere to turn to. So, a misguided member of this family who is very incredibly desperate thinks, well, maybe we should call in the American Indian Movement. And maybe they'll do something. Maybe they can right this wrong. So they did. So now American Indian Movement pulls into Pine Ridge, and the result is they take over this community called Wounded Knee. But when people hear about this, most people, when you research this on the internet, all you're going to find out is, yeah, the American Indian Movement came on to, this injustice happened, and they wanted the America to pay attention and to right this wrong. You don't hear the complete truth. The complete truth is when the American Indian movement went to Wounded Knee, they went just like ISIS. They went there, Indians are already living there, and they say, join us or die. Yeah? And if you refuse to join AIM, they would beat the shit out of you. And sometimes in some cases they killed you, and then they stole all your food, all your clothes, all your belongings. They stole your car, and they headed up to that meeting place, which was that church that used to be at that Wounded Knee massacre grave site. That's where they were going to set up their protest. So they used the same tactics that ISIS used. If you went against them, they killed you. Even if you're an Indian. There was a store and gas station there that was owned by a white man. That's a whole nother story. But this family was on vacation, and so their other people were running it for them. This American Indian movement went there and they stole everything and they set everything on fire that they left behind. Now there was a little museum in this store. And in that museum was a Lakota Star Knowledge map that was thousands of years old. The AIM people looked at it and just threw it on the ground and they burned it. This shows you that the American Indian movement are not knowledgeable of their own culture. This was a sacred thing. This thing was several thousand years old, and they just burned it because they didn't know what it was. That shows you they are not traditional people. They have no respect for anything they do not know. Yeah? It's incredible that they did something like that. That was the last of 2 Lakota Star Knowledge maps. That was one of them. And the American Indian movement destroyed it. Because they didn't know what it was. That's incredible. See the gang mentality? Do you see the mafia mentality? Do you see the terrorist mentality here? Now, there was a black civil rights leader that went there to help them out. An AIM leader, his name was Ray Robinson. An AIM leader didn't like him. So he told one of the guys, go out there, shoot him, and make sure nobody finds the grave. Does that sound like a civil rights group to you? When a leader says, I don't like that guy, take care of it and make sure nobody finds the body. What does that sound like to you? That's mafia. That's a gang. That's terrorism. This is not traditional. This is a coward way. This is the way of a coward. This is not the way of a warrior. Crazy Horse would have never done that. Sitting Bull would have never done that. Even Red Cloud, as corrupt as Red Cloud was, because this Red Cloud was not a good chief, but he wouldn't have been this stupid either. This was not right. The American Indian movement leader ordering the death of a black man just because he's a black man. Incredible. Do you see the racism coming from the American Indian movement? So they made their stand and got the attention of the world media again. So people, when you research this Wounded Knee, American Indian movement taking over Wounded Knee, you're not going to find the entire truth on the internet. There's a lot of things that happened that the American Indian movement does not want you to know. They killed their own people. Who, excuse me, their own people realized that what the American Indian movement was doing was not right. So they wanted to leave AIM. Yeah. So they started to take off from this encampment, and the AIM leaders ordered them to be killed. So the other AIM guys started shooting at these Indians that were trying to escape. One of them didn't die. So they pulled him back to, I think his name was Buddy Lamont. They brought him back to the the um the building, that church building where they were holed up. They just put him in a corner. They let him bleed to death. They wanted him to die slow. This is not a civil rights group. This is a mafia. This is a terrorist group. Yeah. So when you see this movie, there's a movie called Lakota Woman. If you see this movie is incredibly full of shit. This movie is 99% bullshit. The only thing that's true in that movie, the 1%, is the boarding school. That's the boarding school scenes. That's the only part that's true in this movie. The and the Dick Wilson part, that's also true. But the rest of it is total bullshit. That woman is a liar. Yeah, that don't see that movie as truth, because that is all, like I said, 99% lies. Um, Most material out there. Another one, Thunderheart, total bullshit. That's a total bullshit movie. That's not giving you the entire truth. What the American Indian movement did was very, very, and they continue to do, is very, very evil. This is the example of that Indians can be bad. These are not our leaders. These are not traditional people. They can't even speak Indian languages. All they speak is English. These are murderers. These are rapists. These are child molesters. Their leaders come from prison. They were sent to prison for rape, for murder, for child molestation, for selling drugs to their own people. How can you sell drugs if you're a leader, if you're an Indian leader? How can you sell drugs to your own people just to make money and call yourself a leader? And you're making your people give you money so they can die. That's what AIM does. That's not a civil rights group. That's not a traditional group. That's a terrorist group. And they fill their children with hatred from the start, to hate white people. And they use this word washichu as a racist word, but it's not. The word washichu means white people, but it is not a racist word. It's just a word like Lakota. It's just describing a group of people. It doesn't say that you're good or bad, because you're going to find good and bad in every race of people. And the American Indian movement is your evidence of bad Indians. Just because you're Indian doesn't mean you're good. You have to live it. And the American Indian movement is proving the other side. They're living the other side. They're living the unhealthiness, the terrorist side. That's not the way of the warrior. The way of the American Indian movement is the way of a coward. They're not man enough to face up to the actions that they commit. Instead, they blame it on somebody else. Leonard Peltier, he's guilty. He's exactly where he needs to be. He murdered 2 FBI agents as they were pleading for their lives. He talks about this to other prisoners. I have evidence of this. He talks about this to other Indian prisoners. He brags about it. And when he tells the story of how these FBI agents were begging for their lives, he laughs when he says this. This guy is an asshole. He is exactly where he needs to be. But the American Indian movement paints a different picture. They paint him as a martyr. And he's not. Yeah, he's exactly where he needs to be. So, this is like everything that I've said about them is the absolute truth. This is the way of the coward. Yeah, and now, and after this incident at Wounded Knee, it ended in 1973. They had to surrender because they were going to get wiped out now. Yeah, so the one smart thing they did was they surrendered. Okay, now during that time period, there was a lot of unsolved murders on the Pine Ridge in Sioux Reservation. AIM is trying to blame that on Richard Wilson's Goon Squad. The reality is it's a little bit of both. But the majority, AIM, committed those murders. And they made it look like the Goon Squad did it. Yeah? And people know this. Most of the people on the Pine Ridge Reservation that are older, they know this, that this was going on. And the AIM leaders were doing the same damn things the goons were. Yeah? They were, for example, they would go out into the Pine Ridge communities, the tribal communities, and find some young girls and lure them, with their good looks and macho moves and whatever. Give them some beer and stuff like that, get them drunk, and then introduce them to drugs, and then take them someplace, and they just take turns having sex with them. The AIM leaders would basically order up girls every night. They were doing the same thing the goons were doing. Do you see? Here's another example. They do not respect their own women. They see women as nothing but sex objects. Yeah? This is not traditional. This is the way of terrorism. This is the way of a coward. This is not the way of a man. That shows you they're oppressors. That shows you they are dualistic. This is not the ancient way. This is the way that brought down the ancient ones. Yeah, this is the way that killed off the ancient way of living. This living the way the American Indian movement lives, that's what brought that Mother Earth cleansing. That where the earth had to cleanse herself and restore the balance of nature, because this way of thinking almost destroyed her. That's the energy of the American Indian movement. It violates nature. That's not our way. This is why most Indians do not support the American Indian movement. So now, after this Wounded Knee takeover, the AIM leaders kept their people on Pine Ridge Reservation. They said to protect the elders. That's bullshit. Do you know why they left their people there? Because they were witnesses. They saw AIM killing a lot of people. And if they talk, that could cause trouble for AIM. So AIM, being like a terrorist group, terrorizes the people on Pine Ridge and says, you better not talk or you're going to die. Or we kill your kid. We kill your wife. We kill your husband. We kill your grandma. We kill your grandpa. So you better shut up. So for 20 or so years, it was a dangerous place to be on Pine Ridge. It was so dangerous that they stopped all the powwows down there. It's no joke. Because people were paranoid. because you didn't know if you were talking about somebody, and the AIM found out you were talking about them, you're gonna disappear. They're gonna kill you. So AIM was Pine Ridge was a really dangerous place to be back in those days. It was better not to. It was better to avoid that reservation because there was terrorism happening from the American Indian movement. The Goon Squad was doing some trouble, but most of the trouble was caused by the American Indian movement. So do you see, the Raymond Yellow Thunder family never received their justice. Instead, what happened was the situation ended up to becoming even worse than it was in the first place. It was like Pine Ridge had a cold, yeah? And when they brought in the American Indian movement, that was like bringing in the HIV virus. It fucked everything up, and it's still fucked up today. So this is not the way of our ancestors. Yeah? And now a lot of the AIM leaders are dying because they're old. Thank goodness. And people are not afraid to talk now. So now people are talking and they're telling what's really happening. There's already a couple of books out on this. And they're telling what really happened. And it points the finger at AIM, that they were the ones who caused all these murders, that they were the ones who caused all this trouble, that they were the ones who were selling the drugs, running illegal weapons, and ordering murders. That is not the way of the ancestors. That is the way of the coward. This is not traditional. None of them can speak their language. And they hold the pipe like it's a weapon. The pipe is not a weapon, people. The pipe is for peace. But the American Indian people, they hold it like a weapon, like it's a gun. And when they hold it like that, they talk about hating all white people, and they talk about hating all Indians who disagree with them. To hold the pipe in hatred is a really gross dishonor of our ancestors, because our ancestors' blood is in that pipestone. Do you see? This is not the way of the warrior. This is the way of the coward. This is why most people don't support AIM. And those who do are not educated. Like attracts like. Think of it like that. Smarten up and see what's really going on. Yeah? I'll let you think about that. This is the truth. This is not rhetoric. This is not, this is not just me having my own beef with them, because I took the time to check them out. Yeah? When I was a young guy, I was thinking of becoming a member of this group because I liked what they were saying. But I was a young guy. Yeah? I was still developing in my own ways. So I took the time to check them out, and I was like, shit, these guys are no good. These guys are murderers. This is not the way of our people. And I realized that none of these guys can talk Indian. And I realized how macho they were. I realized how unhealthy they were. I realized that they are out to oppress anybody who's not Indian and anybody who disagrees with them. So even if you're an Indian and you disagree with them, they're not gonna like you. They're not even gonna take the time to check you out. They're just gonna say, we don't like that guy. He's talking against us, and we don't like him. That's not respect. Yeah? So I'll let you think about that, yeah? And research it yourself, and you'll see what I mean. Thank you very much for taking time to listen to this show. In our way, everything is circular, so we always come back around, yeah? So there's no goodbye. Instead, we say, until next time, which in our sacred Lakota language is Doksha Ake.